I died quietly. No pain. No warning. I went to sleep and didn't wake up. My name is Max Walter. I was 15 years old, and the last thing I remember from being alive was thinking about how warm my room felt. The heater was too high. My blanket was twisted around my legs. I remember being annoyed by it, then deciding I'd fix it in the morning. That decision never happened. What people don't tell you is that death doesn't always feel like falling or drowning. Sometimes it feels like slipping out of a coat you didn't realize you were wearing. One moment I was inside my body, and the next moment I was not. There was no countdown, no tunnel yet, just a sudden awareness that something essential had stopped. I didn't know I was dead right away. I thought I had woken up earlier than usual. The room looked the same. Posters on the wall. My desk chair half pulled out. My phone dark on the nightstand. But everything felt wrong in a way I didn't have words for then. The air didn't push back when I moved. Sound felt distant, like it was happening behind glass. I tried to breathe and realized I didn't need to. That was the first unsettling thing. The second was seeing myself. My body was still on the bed, turned slightly on its side, mouth open just enough to look uncomfortable. My chest wasn't moving. I remember thinking how strange it was that I looked smaller than I felt inside. Like I was looking at a version of myself that had already been left behind. I didn't feel fear at first. I felt confusion. A quiet, heavy confusion that made everything slow. I tried to speak, but there was no voice. I tried to touch my arm, and my hand went through it. That was when the truth started to press in. Something had ended, and something else had already begun. Before that night, my life was painfully ordinary. That's the part that still surprises me the most. I was a sophomore. I hated waking up early. I loved staying up too late. My biggest problems were unfinished homework and whether my friends would sit with me at lunch or drift to another table. I wasn't sick. I wasn't depressed. I wasn't searching for answers or praying for signs. I was just living, assuming time was guaranteed. My days followed the same pattern. School, bus ride home, video games, music through one earbud so my mom wouldn't yell from the kitchen, dinner that I barely tasted, arguments about grades that didn't feel important enough to fight over properly. I thought adulthood was far away. Death felt like something that belonged to old people or bad news stories, not to someone who still needed permission to go out. I believed in God in a loose way, not strongly enough to change how I lived, not strongly enough to question it either. Jesus was a name I heard in church on holidays, a figure in paintings, someone other people talked about with confidence I didn't have. I assumed that if any of it mattered, I'd figure it out later. That later felt endless. The night I died didn't stand out. I brushed my teeth. I scrolled on my phone. I set an alarm I would never hear. I remember thinking about something stupid I'd said earlier and feeling embarrassed, then laughing quietly to myself. That was it. No final thought. No sense of closure. I fell asleep thinking about tomorrow. If you had asked me that day what I feared most, death wouldn't have made the list. I was more worried about being forgotten by people who were still alive. I didn't realize how close forgetting really was. Everything felt stable, safe, normal. That's what made the break so violent. There was no crash, no scream, no dramatic moment where everything went black. My heart just stopped. I didn't feel it happen. I didn't feel pain in my chest or panic in my mind. 1 second, my body was asleep. The next second, it was empty. Like a room after the lights have been shut off, and no one tells you why. From the outside, it would have looked peaceful. A boy sleeping. No movement. No sign that anything had gone wrong. That's what makes it hard to explain. Death didn't announce itself. It didn't ask permission. From where I was, it felt like being pulled upward without motion. There was a soft pressure, not on my body, but on my awareness, as if something had gently taken hold of the center of me and lifted it free. Time behaved strangely. I can't say how long passed between my heart stopping and my realizing I was no longer alive. It could have been seconds. It could have been nothing at all. The idea of before and after was already losing meaning. I became aware of a silence that wasn't empty. It felt full, layered, watching. The room around my body faded, not disappearing, but becoming less important. Like background noise you stop noticing once someone says your name. That's when I felt it. A presence. Not touching me. Not speaking. Just there. close enough to make everything else feel small. I didn't see it yet, but I knew, with a certainty that scared me more than fear ever could, that I wasn't alone anymore. And whatever had arrived knew exactly who I was. The moment I fully understood I wasn't in my body anymore, the room lost its edges. The walls didn't vanish, but they stopped behaving like walls. Distance folded in on itself. I could see my bed and, at the same time, feel far away from it. My body was still there, unchanged, but it no longer felt like me. It felt like something I used to live in. I floated without moving. There was no up or down, no weight, no balance to keep. I didn't have hands the way I remembered them, but I could still focus, still turn my attention from one thing to another. Thought was movement now. I noticed details I had never cared about before. Dust on the shelf. A crack in the ceiling, paint shaped like a crooked line. The faint glow of my phone screen when a notification lit it up and faded again. That was unsettling. The world kept going, completely unaware that I had stopped participating in it. I tried to call out, not with my mouth, but with intent. Nothing answered from the room. No echo. No response. It felt like shouting underwater. Then I felt a pull. Not forceful. Patient. It didn't drag me away from my body. It made staying feel unnecessary. Like standing in a place you suddenly realize you were never meant to remain in. As I followed that pull, the room thinned. Colors softened. Edges blurred. My body became distant, then irrelevant, then gone. I didn't feel loss yet. I felt clarity. A strange, clean clarity that made panic impossible. I understood, without anyone telling me, that I had crossed a line. There was no tunnel at first. Just darkness that wasn't dark in the way night is dark. It wasn't empty. It was waiting. And as I moved deeper into it, the silence changed. It became heavier, more intentional. That's when the presence drew closer. I felt him before I saw him. The space around me grew warmer, not in temperature, but in feeling. Like standing near something powerful that didn't need to announce itself. The silence shifted again, this time becoming gentle instead of vast. When I finally saw him, there was no shock. No surprise. It felt familiar in a way I can't explain. Like recognizing someone you've never met, but somehow always known. He didn't appear suddenly. He was simply there, standing a short distance away. Not glowing in a dramatic way. Not surrounded by light. Just present. Solid. Real. More real than anything I had ever seen before. I knew who he was immediately. Jesus didn't speak at first. He looked at me the way someone looks when they already understand everything you're trying to hide. There was no judgment in it. No disappointment. Just complete awareness. That alone made me feel exposed. I wanted to explain myself. To say I didn't mean to die. That I had plans. That I was young. None of that mattered. The urge to justify myself faded the longer he looked at me. I realized something then that unsettled me deeply. He wasn't surprised to see me. This moment wasn't unexpected to him. It had a weight of intention that made me feel small without making me feel afraid. When he finally spoke, it wasn't with sound. The words arrived fully formed inside me. Come with me. There was no command in it. No force. Just an invitation that felt impossible to refuse. Not because I was trapped, but because I suddenly wanted to understand more than I wanted to go back. I followed him. As we moved, the space around us changed again. It opened into something wide and dim, like an endless plain without ground or sky. I couldn't tell where the light came from, only that it was enough to see. I had always thought that after death, answers would be given immediately, that everything confusing about life would suddenly make sense. That belief broke quietly as soon as we stopped. Jesus turned to face me, and I felt something shift inside me. A pressure. Not painful. Honest. I realized how many things I thought I understood that I had never really examined. I believed being good enough was enough. That intention mattered more than attention. That time would always be available later. None of that was true in the way I assumed. Without showing me scenes yet, he let me feel the weight of my choices. Not just the big ones. The small dismissals. The quiet delays. The way I treated belief like something optional instead of alive. I understood then that I hadn't rejected anything outright. I had simply postponed it. I lived as if meaning could wait until it was convenient. That was the mistake. It wasn't anger I felt from him. It was clarity. A clarity that made excuses collapse on their own. I saw how comfortable my assumptions had been, how safe they felt, how thin they actually were. Jesus didn't tell me I was wrong. He let me see it. And that was far more unsettling than being corrected with words. The space around us shifted without warning. One moment we were standing in that wide, dim openness. The next, I was somewhere else entirely. Jesus didn't walk ahead of me. He didn't gesture. The change simply happened, like a curtain being pulled back inside my mind. I was standing between two paths. They weren't marked. No signs. No labels. Just two directions stretching away from where I stood. One path was narrow and uneven. It didn't look dangerous, but it didn't look comfortable either. The surface was rough, and it disappeared into a kind of haze I couldn't see through. The other path was wide and smooth, almost inviting. It curved gently and stayed clearly visible as far as I could look. The air above it felt lighter, easier. I didn't need anyone to tell me which one I wanted. As I focused on the wider path, I felt a pull toward it. Not force, familiarity. It felt like everything I had already chosen in life. Comfort, approval, delay. The idea that nothing urgent was required yet. When I looked back at the narrow path, I felt resistance. Not fear exactly, more like reluctance. It looked demanding. Like it would ask something of me I hadn't planned on giving. Jesus still didn't explain anything. He stood behind me now, close enough that I could sense him without turning around. I felt no pressure from him to choose either way. That's what made it harder. I realized then that choice wasn't dramatic here. It wasn't announced. It wasn't locked in by one moment. It was quiet, subtle, repeated. The paths waited. And for the first time, I understood that indecision itself leaned in one direction more than the other. The wide path changed as I looked at it longer. What first felt open and safe slowly filled with things I recognized. Familiar spaces, comfortable rooms, people smiling in a distant, unfocused way. Everything looked pleasant. Warm lighting, soft edges, no conflict. I stepped forward without realizing I had moved. Inside this place, nothing hurt. Nothing demanded attention. Time felt stretched, loose, almost endless. It felt like rest without effort. Like finally lying down after a long day you didn't think mattered much. But something was missing. I noticed it slowly. At first, I couldn't name it. Conversations felt shallow, looping back on themselves. Faces didn't change. Laughter sounded the same every time. There was no tension, but there was no depth either. I tried to feel joy. It stayed on the surface. I tried to feel sadness. It didn't arrive at all. Then I noticed the stillness. Nothing here grew. Nothing aged. Nothing moved forward. It was comfort without direction. Safety without meaning. I realized, with a quiet shock, that nothing here required me to be present. I could fade without consequence. That's when the weight hit me. This place wasn't punishment. It was absence. An endless postponement that never became anything more. The same choice, repeated forever, without urgency, without end. I turned back instinctively. The moment I did, the comfort thinned. The warmth dimmed. The false calm lost its hold. I felt a sharp awareness return, like blood rushing back into a limb that had fallen asleep. Jesus was there again. Watching. Waiting. He showed me something else then. I saw my life again, but not as memories. As impressions. Moments layered on top of each other. From the outside, it looked fine. Ordinary. Harmless. A normal kid doing normal things. No scandals. No disasters. But beneath that surface, I could see the quiet patterns I had ignored. The way I avoided stillness. The way I filled silence with noise so I wouldn't have to think too deeply. The way I treated truth like something abstract instead of personal. I saw how often I chose what looked good over what felt honest. From the outside, my life looked safe. From the inside, it was thin. Jesus didn't accuse me. He didn't list failures. He let me feel the difference between appearance and substance. Between being alive and actually living with intention. I saw moments where I could have paid attention and didn't. Moments where I felt a pull toward something deeper and brushed it off. Not because I was evil, because I was distracted. That hurt more than guilt. I understood then that what matters most rarely announces itself loudly. It waits quietly, patient, easy to ignore, easy to miss if you assume you'll always have time to come back to it. The vision faded slowly. What stayed was the understanding that the line between a meaningful life and an empty one isn't dramatic. It's subtle, and it's crossed long before anyone notices from the outside. The sense of calm didn't return after that. Instead, everything felt tighter, closer. The space around us seemed to lean inward, not threatening, but pressing. Like the air before a storm when you can feel something coming but don't know from where. Jesus didn't raise his voice. He didn't change his expression. But what he let me feel carried urgency without panic. It wasn't about dates, or numbers, or how long anyone had left. It was about now. I felt how fragile attention really is, how easily it slips away, how quickly habits harden into defaults. I saw how time isn't taken from people all at once. It's thinned, quietly, moment by moment, until one day, there's nothing left to work with. The pressure wasn't fear of punishment. It was the weight of opportunity closing. I understood that waiting is not neutral. That postponing meaning doesn't freeze it in place. It erodes it, slowly, politely, without warning signs. Jesus let me feel how quickly a life can become shaped by what it avoids instead of what it chooses. How comfort, once relied on, becomes a current that carries you somewhere you never actively decided to go. There was no threat in him, only honesty. I felt something like grief then. Not for my life ending, but for how easily it could have continued in a shallow direction without ever collapsing visibly. How I could have stayed busy, entertained, approved of, and still missed the core of it all. The urgency wasn't loud. It was heavy, and it made me want to hold on to awareness with everything I had. I felt resistance before I understood what was happening. Not from him, from me. The space began to pull away, reversing in a way that felt wrong. Like being asked to leave in the middle of something unfinished. I tried to stay focused, to hold on to what I was seeing, but it slipped through me like water. I felt weight again. Suddenly, I had a body. It was heavy, dense, painful. My chest burned like I had been underwater too long. My lungs forced air in violently, without asking permission. Everything hurt at once. Sound crashed back in. Harsh. Too loud. A ringing filled my ears. I felt cold, then too hot, then cold again. My heart slammed hard enough to scare me. I opened my eyes. The room was the same. Same posters. Same chair. Same phone lighting up again. But I wasn't the same inside it. My body felt tight, unfamiliar, like it had almost forgotten how to hold me. I coughed and gasped, shaking uncontrollably. Panic tried to rise, but something steadier sat underneath it. Awareness. Sharp and awake. I knew where I had been, and I knew, with certainty, that returning wasn't guaranteed a second time. I lay there for a long time, staring at the ceiling, afraid to move. Afraid that if I closed my eyes, I wouldn't open them again. But I did, and the weight of that stayed with me. I don't talk about this to scare anyone. I talk about it because I still feel it in quiet moments. When everything slows down, when there's nothing demanding my attention, that same thin line between distraction and awareness shows up again. I didn't come back with answers to everything. I didn't come back fearless. I came back attentive. Life didn't suddenly become perfect. School still mattered. People still disappointed me. I still made small, careless choices. But I couldn't unsee how much those small choices shaped direction over time. What unsettles me most isn't that I died. It's how easily I could have lived without noticing what mattered until it was already behind me. I don't know why I was shown what I was shown. I don't know why I returned. I only know that comfort can be empty, and urgency doesn't always feel loud or dramatic. Sometimes it just feels like a quiet nudge you keep ignoring. If this feels uncomfortable to hear, I understand. It still feels uncomfortable to remember. But something about that discomfort feels honest. And honesty, I've learned, is rare enough to pay attention to when it shows up. That's all this is. Something that stayed with me. Something I don't want to forget again.